Hello and welcome to En Route, the podcast that is a journey of faith in modern life. Well, it is December. I hope that you have had a good Thanksgiving and that you're entering into the season of Advent. This is Dennis Sanders, your host. This is the podcast where we explore the who, where, why, what, and how of religion and other topics. So, what's going on today? Well, tell me if you've heard this one before. There's this Mainline Protestant congregation in some city or suburb. It might be about 60 years old. It could be 120 years old. The kind of good old days of this congregation were in the 1960s and 70s, when the church had maybe about 800 members and had 2 services every Sunday. Then in the 1980s, the church started to lose members. It was just a few people at first, but then it accelerated. There were families that left, but there were also older members, some that died and some that could no longer make it to church. There were a lot of different things that were tried in order to maybe turn things around, but nothing really worked. By 2010, the church that once had 800 members in 1967 now had about 80 members. The church that was once bursting at the seams now feels empty. The remaining members are starting to wonder how much time they have until they'll have to close the doors of the church. Now, this scenario, or something like it, has been played out over and over again in congregations around the country. Churches are dealing with declining membership and declining budgets. And just like this fictional church, they wonder, how long do they have until they have to hold their last worship service? It doesn't have to be that way. Peace Lutheran Church is a congregation of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. It's located in the small town of Lauderdale, which actually kind of lodged between Minneapolis and St. Paul. When Pastor Dave Greenlund was asked to pastor the congregation, he was basically told by the Synod office that he may have to be the hospice pastor for the congregation, the person that was going to allow and help to lead the church to die a good death. That was in 2004. Peace is still alive. It's still kicking, and it's even grown a bit. So in this episode, I get to chat with Reverend Greenlund, and it's about the story of Peace, how it learned to connect with the community around it, and actually how it learned to be dead in order that it could be resurrected. Let's listen to Dave Greenlund. It's good to have you on this podcast, Dave.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I think the first thing to ask is a little bit about your own background as a pastor, Lutheran pastor, and then a little bit about the church itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So I'm from the inner city of Chicago, and was Lutheran my whole life as a kid. Just happened to be the church that our family lived closest to. With, a single mom and grandparents. And I went to a Lutheran college in South Dakota, because it was far enough away and something different culturally. And when it came time for me to go to seminary, I decided that I'd been steeped in the Lutheran tradition for so long. I needed something different. I needed to see what the world was as far as Christianity went. And so I left School of Theology, a Methodist school in Denver.
Okay.
And then when I got a taste of the Methodists and the United Church of Christ and the Catholics and everybody else, it was much more diverse religiously there. George Tinker, Osage Indian and Lutheran, was my advisor at ILIF. And he said, boy, when you go off for your Lutheran year after your master's, you should really go to the GTU in Berkeley, California, because they really have a connection to all the denominations. So that's what I did. And I ended up on the West Coast for a good number of years, 4 or 5 years, and then had an internship in Hollywood, California. Made my way back east for my first call in the Black Hills, South Dakota. And then Como Park Lutheran Church here in St. Paul, and then eventually over here to Peace Lutheran. So this is my third call.
Okay.
And yeah.
And what made you? How did you find yourself at Peace? What got you there?
Yeah. Basically got a call from the bishop's office asking if I would consider moving over from Como Park to here, which is, and you can drive there in 3 minutes or less. It's so close. And usually that's not usually thought of as a good idea, because you'll have, parishioners that'll follow a pastor to another place if it's just down the street, and didn't really want that kind of a mess. But, the bishop at the time, I just thought, I don't have any issue with that. The two churches are so vastly different. Mm-hmm. One being very traditional, and the other one being so small and almost like a rural church in the middle of the city. And besides that, it had very few members, and the bishop's office more or less thought, our days were numbered here. So they leveled with me and said, if you take that call, basically it's hospice ministry, and you'll be closing the ministry down after 70 years or so, because it's just got a handful of people left. And that's what it'll be. So I basically came in with my eyes open to the interviews, and then found out really quickly that the people on the call committee, they weren't looking at it as a time to shut the building down, shut the ministry down. They were looking to find ways to radically do something different in their neighborhood, but just didn't have the bodies. So it's kind of a very traditional story in the mainline church now, especially for inner city. Well, even more suburban and even country churches. How do we get people back in the membership or back in the community of faith? And so when it's been going downhill for so long, as far as people being a part of it, it's pretty hard to turn it around. So I think it was just being realistic on the part of the Synod. And we just had our second kid too. So, and we just happened to live 2 blocks from this church in Lauderdale itself, which is a little city, little town with its own city hall and everything. So I came in and realized really quickly that they really wanted to do something. And I thought, well, that's kind of exciting without a lot of illusions of, boy, this could be something, whatever, that could stay around. They had the ticker going, at the current giving rate of the current membership, we will be open for 18 months. And then it was, then we'll be open for 16 months. And every month, depending on what the offerings were, we would adjust that. Okay, we've got enough money to exist for 11 more months, or and so it was kind of, and sometimes even published in the bulletin that way, which becomes such a defeatist kind of a thing. You've seen it in many places. In order to continue this ministry, we need $1 million each week. Last week we got $27.60. This is how far off we are, and so basically people can just continue to stare at the wreckage of a ministry that it can't sustain itself. So that just really deflates people. So They were kind of there, but at the same time, they were really wanted to be faithful to this place, this neighborhood, and do something. And so they wanted to hire me full time. And I would have, I'm more apt to say, yeah, I'll just, how about if I come halftime? They wanted a full-time person in a ministry that wasn't taking anywhere near full-time, needs. My wife at the time is my greatest agent and advocate. And she said, you can't take anything less than guidelines for full-time ministry there, because we do have a second kid and she was in school. And the way she looked at it, and I think it's pretty right on. If I were to take the call here, if they paid me guidelines, we would just close that much quicker, a month earlier versus 6 months, later, depending upon the money. So if we really want to be full time, let's do this the right way and just let's just have faith and move forward. But and at the same time, the people here, the handful, they were realistic too. They recognized that, as much as they desired to stay alive, it might not be in the cards. It might not be the best thing. It might not be. They may not have what the neighborhood needed at this moment, and they were going to be okay with that. So the idea was, if I came here, we would do what we always wanted to do here, as a people, and we won't go out just wishing. So one of the things that they wanted to do for years here, I came to find out, was they always wanted to work on houses in the neighborhood for their neighbors and care for their neighbors. And they even put it in place. They did a lot of work in developing a program, a barter system program, where people would sign up with their gifts and they would get points for their gifts. So I'm always fond of saying, if you were a brain surgeon here and you said, I could do brain surgery, you would get the equivalent of 5 points per hour. But if you crocheted gloves, hats, and mittens, it takes a lot longer to do that. Mm-hmm. But it takes expertise too. That only gets 3 points per hour. So a brain surgeon gets 5 points per hour. And so the idea is, a plumber would get 3 points per hour, 5 points. And then when you needed some work, let's say the person doing the gloves would need some plumbing work. They could call the plumber and say, I've got 6 points saved up. Could you come and work on my plumbing? And that's the way it was designed to work, but it didn't work. And I've come to understand it didn't work because people didn't really need each other. People really don't need each other. For instance, there was a person that's actually still here that would give you the shirt off of her back and her husband's and lend you their car. They would do all kinds of things. They would rack up so many points in helping people if they were allowed to help people do whatever. But they didn't want to call anybody to come and do their windows, their window washing, because they didn't want to feel like, they were using people. So I think it's the number one issue we have as a culture. I call it a credit card culture. Credit cards are really easy. You offer up a credit card and you don't see the workers. You don't have to know their names. You don't have to feed them. You don't have to interact with them. You just pay the bill later, and it'd be better not to talk about the money at all. Just send the bill. And but when it comes to Jane is coming to wash your windows, and everybody knows Jane is hypoglycemic. So everybody knows, okay, we'll take care of Jane when she comes, and she's good on ladders, but you got to watch her, and she does a great job on windows. So that would be her gift. Well, what would you do if you had a credit card and you had the means? Would you hire a window cleaning company while you were gone on vacation, or would you get involved with Jane on the ladder So the relationships always take longer, and you have to own the project together.
Mm-hmm.
And if the windows don't get completely cleaned the proper way, you only have Jane and yourself to blame, instead of just pushing it off to some other. Again, the credit card separates us. It becomes a wall between us and our neighbor. So it failed. They had all these, over 100 people signed up with the gifts that they could offer, but nobody was calling in ever to get help. And, it was, it was a wonderful vision. So when I got here, that's one of the things we had to work with is what do they want to do? And
when you mean they, you mean the congregation?
The congregation of 20 or less people. They really wanted to live out this vision, and but now it was becoming apparent that they were very close to closing. They could see the end from where they were seated. And so what we agreed on was, okay, let's have this vision. Let's do this. Let's take the money we've got left and put flyers out at every house in Lauderdale. 700 houses is about what we have. And by foot, we walked around, delivered these flyers, and just put them in the doors. Don't bother anybody. Don't knock on the doors. I mean, they've been practicing for months before I came in 2004. They've been practicing about knocking on the doors of neighbors 2 by 2, because Jesus calls us to go out 2 by 2. And it would work like this. One person would go up to the door, the other person would stay on the curb, and you'd go up with your little board, and you knock on the door. Somebody would finally come after you prayed for a whole minute that they wouldn't. They finally opened their door, and they say, "Can I help you?" And you say, "Yeah, we're from Peace Lutheran Church. Do you have a couple minutes for 3 questions? Because it's better to ask people questions and engage them than just say, 'Hey, would you come to church?'" So the questions are, what do you think the neighborhood needs? What could the church do more for the neighborhood? And everybody always answered the same question. The questions the same way. It was always, we need something more for the children, and we need to feel safer. Well, those are like, who's going to disagree with those? But so you end up with the conversation ending in a pretty surface way. And then you go down to the curb, and then you go to the next house and you say, "You go up and get this one because I had the last one. I'll wait here for you." And that's all there is to it. And so I said, if we put the flyers out, we're not talking to anybody unless you run into them. Don't ring any bells. Leave it alone. And they said, why? I mean, that's against everything that is out there in any literature about going and meeting your neighbors. I said, but let's think about it this way. And this is just for our neighborhood. It could be true for other places too. I found it's kind of true in a lot of places, but at least where I've been, if I wasn't your pastor called here, I live 2 blocks from here. So let me guess, you want to go and meet these people right at supper time because everybody will be there at supper time. So I said, I'm not your pastor. You ring my bell. It's supper time. I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I'm making dinner alone. The bell rings. I look around the corner and I see through the front window that it's somebody with a clipboard. And I see somebody down below on the bottom of the steps. And I'm thinking Jehovah's Witnesses. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, shoot, there's a pot of water boiling and I've got a 4-year-old that wants to climb up there and stir it. What am I going to? So, all right, since they already saw me before I duck back in the kitchen and pretend like I'm not home, I've got to go to the door. Now I open the door. Now we're starting a relationship in a very precarious place. I don't want to be answering the door and they don't want me to answer the door. So we're starting a relationship in a place where neither one of us really wants to be there. And now we're going to go from there. So I just said, forget it. Unless you run into somebody and you have a natural connection, and you can have a conversation, let it be. So we did that. We put these flyers out, and out of 700 flyers, we got 3 responses, and which isn't a whole lot, and one of them was a member. So the flyers basically said, we'll come and we'll fix anything on your house. Mm-hmm. From foundation to roof, plumbing, electric, anything you got wrong, we'll bring all the materials and we'll bring the labor for free. And at first they were worried about, we've only got $40,000 left in this ministry. If we do this, we could go through that in 1 week with a house project. And I said, yeah, that's true, but we're not going to get anybody to ask for help. Number one, that's going to be a problem. And I basically said, if a church group that I didn't know about showed up on my doorstep and said, we want to put a roof on your house for free, I would chase them off my property. So, get out of here. I don't know you, and I don't know what what are you doing? And I mean, are you roofers? All of that. So we had three takers, and one was a whole house that needed to be painted. That was the member, or the soon to be member. That's the only member we've ever gotten from this program. And so we had 2 others. One was a garage that was kind of falling into the ground, kind of rotting. And another one was a roof project. And so we had 3 of them. And the weekend that came, we showed up, and we had about 20 members that came, and a handful of people from the neighborhood that I already knew. And we made these little sandwich boards that we called it Christmas in August. And partly because it's kind of a neat name. Nobody knows what it is. And it gives people the natural first question, like, what is that? And we'd put the boards up in the front, and neighbors would come out and say, what are you guys doing? What's happening here? Because none of us really look like construction workers, and we're kind of a ragtag team. And we tell them what we're doing, and they either helped or they'd give us a lot of accolades. And by the time that first summer project was done, we had more money than when we started, because the neighbors were donating, just saying, we're so glad you're doing this for Millie, or, thank you so much. How can we help? And at first I was a little frustrated, because I thought, we're trying to wear down this account so we can close, it's like, and we didn't. And we made it through that first year. And people started paying attention, and we wrote a couple grants, and we were awarded some money, and we started picking up members that heard about the program. And then the next year we had 5 houses that responded. Mm-hmm. And the next year there was 7. It grew every year. And then as we went along, like I say, we got 1 member from all the people we've helped over the years. Probably, 200 houses we've been in. We've only gotten 1 member, but we've gotten a ton of members that wanted to come and join in on helping their neighbors. So that's been very sweet. We've learned a lot that way. And now we've become a program where we do get together for 1 weekend a year, and we usually work on between 15 and 25 houses. Okay. In all kinds of ways. And but we'll be, in a lot of cases in this neighborhood, we'll be the first call for help for everything from backed up sewers to leaky roofs to, I need help getting my car, started, or so just general things of life. And then, of course, those people will call during the year as well when they have a loved one die, or, just the basic caring for each other kinds of things, and loving your neighbor. And so we've got a very rich presence in the neighborhood. And we worship, before the COVID thing happened, we would have physically in the building 50 people for worship. We went in the first couple of years of doing this from the fastest growing ELCA church in the country because we were growing exponentially.
That's amazing.
It's really easy to do when you've got 2 people. 4 people is doubling your ministry. That's pretty good. And I remember at a pastor's meeting, I had a friend that came up and said, "Oh my gosh, did you see that your church was named as this exponential growth? Where do you see it ending? Are you going to keep growing like that?" And I said, "No, we're not going to keep growing like that. We're gonna hit the place where we've got some kind of a sustainable thing, or we're going to hit some kind of an equilibrium." And I think we're close to that. And I'm guessing that's where we'll be, and we'll help each other. And but it's not a dream to keep growing exponentially.
One question: I was reading the article about you from Living Lutheran.
Oh yeah.
And I think this was early on when you were interviewing with them, because they would say that the congregation was dying. Mm-hmm. You said it was dead, and could you kind of explain what did that mean? And of course, the congregation isn't closed, but you were already saying it was basically dead.
Yeah, you're hitting on a really big point. They wanted to see themselves when I came in 2004 as a congregation that was trying to redevelop itself, or it was trying to hang on. And no matter what they tried, it really wasn't getting any traction. And so we're a dying congregation. And I was the first Sunday that I was there, or I was here for installation, was the first Sunday installation service, and we had about 150 or 200 people packed in this little sanctuary. And I thought, man, they were selling me a bill of goods. They're doing great. Until I started to realize, looking out there, that, a lot of them were my wife's family, extended family, people from Como Park that came over to wish me well and send me on a new ministry, and just a handful of people that I'd known. And I thought, if you subtract all those, it probably will be a lot less. Well, the next Sunday came, the Sunday after, and it was the raising of Lazarus. And I remember looking out at the congregation, and we had these pews set up just like a regular, sanctuary, facing forward, 14-foot pews on each side with a bowling alley down the middle. And not even enough room on the side aisles to get a wheelchair up there, and about 11 people in the sanctuary for worship. And of the 11 people, 5 were seminary students that were Con Ed program. And to realize that, the Con Ed students were doing all the lessons, they were serving communion, they were, doing all these, what came to be known as the professional religious parts. And as I was looking out at these people, they were sitting all over the place, and they, they would smile, but there was hardly any. I just said, you guys really, you pulled the wool over my eyes here. I said, you guys told me that you were a dying church. You're not dying. You're dead. This is dead. And they were a little shocked. And I just said, it's you're done. And I said, the good news is, you're dead. The good news is you're dead. The good news is you can resurrect something dead. You can't resurrect something almost dead. It's kind of like, the movie, I forget what it was called. It doesn't matter, but, when you're always on the line and you're still operating under your own steam, it's so easy to just be clutching at whatever you can grab in order to stay from going under. and keep bailing out the boat. And it's like, we don't belong in a boat. The boat doesn't float. Just get in the water. We're dead. And to recognize that we've got nothing to lose. We're dead already. $40,000 in a bank account, it doesn't matter because we're dead. A dead person has no use for that. So let's take that good news and just take those resources and pay them forward. And we'll celebrate the ministry with a potluck. We'll say goodbye and we'll go out on a good note, giving the money away rather than, trying to do everything we could to keep floating. And that was a key moment for us to recognize there's no guarantee for tomorrow. And we have to just move into that recognition that we're already gone. We're already pushing up daisies, and it's okay. So good memory.
So, but do you think that moment, I don't want to say turn things around, but made a difference in that the church is still here, almost 20 years later? That was the death in some ways a sense of letting things go, mm-hmm. and then kind of allowing what God was going to bring from this death.
Right. We well, let's I'm an artist, potter and a painter, and so I'm a very visual person, and I know one thing I firmly believe, and it's you need to have a holy imagination in order to keep existing in a hopeless situation. You have to imagine yourself as blessed. It's like, blessed are those that mourn. And not blessed are those who are done mourning and are already having a good day. It's blessed are those that mourn. And it's in the act of mourning that we are able to recognize that, we're not waiting for tomorrow before the blessing comes. We are blessed. And blessed are those whose churches are hopeless. For, they will go on and do good things. They will go on and do powerful things. So imagination is important. And visually, I know that it's, worship is a very visual, tactile thing. I always call it a holy waste of time. I don't know if Gordon Lathrop said that or not, but worship is a holy waste of time. An hour and a half every week of our lives. We get nothing done. We are useless as far as any production of anything. And in so many ways, it's such a healing thing. But we spend all this energy in choirs, making banners, making sure communion plates are clean, or that paraments are all set up, or new banners for the altar. Candlesticks are just, all of the unessential things that don't matter are beautiful and are in the right place. And so one thing I do know is we get to do things that are so rote that you might have the most beautiful weaving for a banner in the world. And if you've had it up there for 25 years, you could walk past it and never see it. So it needs to be changing. You need to be creating, and you need to be actively doing that as a people. I believe that. It's instead, I think we've relegated the arts in communities of faith to Mrs. Johnson. And no offense to Mrs. Johnson, bless her heart. But Mrs. Johnson is known as the banner maker, and whether that's good or not, sometimes Mrs. Johnson really got stuck on gluing shells to gunny sacks, potato sacks, and doing block letters out of felt. That there's nothing wrong with that, but let's give that proper time to be shown and move on. Mm-hmm. The same is true with the most elaborate weavings. You can buy You can buy altar paraments from companies for thousands of dollars a piece. Well, who's going to move those on when you have this capital campaign to pay, tens of thousands of dollars for things that somebody else manufactured and you put up? So it becomes more of a feeding the idea of the holy professional religion.
Mm-hmm.
If you order it through a such and such company, then it must be a wholly professional thing, rather than, let the kids make it, and you might be surprised. So I think visually we started to work with the sanctuary and do art shows, and we cut up the pews. We started cutting the pews up because we only had a handful of people. Why not sit in a circle?
Mm-hmm.
Do we believe God is in our midst, or do we believe God is projected up on one end of the building? Should we look at each other when we speak and sing? How should we develop, who we are, and make our setting reflect what we believe? And so so I had to become a cheerleader for some awful projects. Awful. Like, we pulled the carpet out after we cut the pews up, and the floor was so ugly. It was all, asbestos tile from the 50s, brown and light brown and dark and just horrible. And we couldn't afford to cover them, but we did. We primer painted over the top of those things, and then we invited people to bring house paint, and we were going to teach each other how to marbleize the floor so it would look like marble. And it was horrible. And but then we put glazes over the top. We've got another artist here who knows how to do glazing techniques over the top, and tied it all together beautifully. And then we installed a labyrinth on the floor. So we've got this nice circle. So we focus ourselves around that labyrinth. So it becomes a different focal point. But it talks about the journey, and we're all on a journey. We don't know where we're going or how we're going to get there, but we do it together. And so we started reflecting visually
mm-hmm.
what we were trying to live out. And so all of a sudden, I put the seminary students that were wonderful. I've had so many wonderful seminary students back when that program was really working. I'll put them on notice. If you really need to practice reading the lessons, you can let me know. But if you're pretty good at reading the lessons, forget it. We don't need you. We're going to give the lesson reading to the people. And if people are not good at reading and they want, that's okay. We'll go slow. We'll listen. We'll let them correct themselves. So we started doing very unprofessional worship services. People collecting offerings that, couldn't remember if they'd gone up that aisle or not, or gone over to that side of the circle. And kids were involved in, communion serving, and very, very, on the ground, very rooted in this community. And so if seminary students needed to preach, that's great. In fact, that was super as far as I was concerned. I need a break every once in a while, but we don't need them. We don't need them to do all of the professional church stuff. That's the work of the people. Mm-hmm. And let's empower the people. And lo and behold, what do you find out? But the people that weren't the best at those jobs are stars. They are the stars. And that's the gospel right there. And so the seminary students really enjoyed that. Some did, some didn't. That they really wanted a lot of experience doing all the stuff. And but that era changed and ended. And we still had students around. That was beautiful. But I feel like we gave the ministry back to the people that were here. And as people came, we really believed that they should change us. Every person that comes through that door should change us in some way, shape, or form, because we are a reflection together. And if they're just fitting into what we're doing, And if you like us, you like us. If you don't, go somewhere else, So we've shifted over the years and we've changed, and we continue to do that. But yeah, they were dead, and resurrection keeps coming to us over and over again, and it's been rich.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of, and you've probably already answered this question, is kind of where have you seen resurrection happening? It seems like that's been happening in having the people kind of taking over some of the parts of the service that for so long they didn't have a role in.
Right. And as in a lot of churches, I said early on, it's like, people say, the sign of a growing church is that there are children around, there are little kids around. Where are the kids? And at first we only had a handful of kids, we had 2 of them that we brought, and it's like, I said, well, there are children in each one of us. We each have an inner child. So I want all of us, including 97-year-old, Alice Matthews, all of us are on our knees painting the sanctuary floor. We're giving it our best shot and having fun with it and laughing at our mistakes. And we're going to be kids. And the grieving that takes place, we don't have enough kids to do a Christmas program, that kind of a thing. And it's like, well, we're still going to have a Christmas program. We're going to come and everybody just grab an outfit when you come in the door, and it's a no rehearsal Christmas program. And we'll call people up as the parts are told, and we'll have a narrator. And just to give you a little taste of this, we had a little girl that came. She's about 10 years old now. And when she was 2, her second birthday, she went in for a well check, and they found she had kidney cancer, and she needed to get a kidney removed and then have chemo and radiation. And as a 2-year-old. And so we walked with that family for, a couple of years of treatment and trying to get through cancer. Well, when she was about 4, 2 years later, the Christmas program came around, and here she is. She's bald except for the furry little hair on the top of her chemo-ridden head. And she's got steroids in her, and she's got necropathy in her feet. So her feet don't work perfectly. And anyway, she wants to be an angel for the Christmas pageant that year. And she comes in, and I tell you what, so disruptive. I mean, yelling and laughing, and she can't sit still in this angel outfit. So there are a bunch of angel outfits running around, and this kid is running from one end of the church sanctuary to the other and squealing. And there's not a dry eye in the place, because who's to say that angels are supposed to be well-behaved or sit still or, be angelic, whatever angelic is? We just were so gleefully thankful that she was alive. Mm-hmm. And we were so happy that in her steroid-induced, hyperactivity, she was flying as an angel from end to end. And she really set us straight, because you still have people that, we want the kids to behave, and it's like, she really changed us. She changed us in her illness. And she's changed us through this pandemic too, as a 10-year-old. Mm. She's very compromised. If she gets it, she's in big trouble. So there's very few, I don't think there's anybody here that would not wear a mask or do what they could to protect that kid. And it's because they know the angel that she is, and she's got a little demon underneath that costume. Well, we love that little demon. And so, yeah, our pageants are going to be a little chaotic. I mean, okay, they're going to be very chaotic. Mm-hmm. But that's the way our life is, too. And somewhere holiness comes through in that. And it's changed us. Yeah, so that's resurrection right there, to do a Christmas pageant nobody comes to me anymore and says, I'm so nervous and worried. Nobody's helping me put the Christmas pageant together. The kids aren't coming for practices and I'm sick of it. I'm not doing it anymore. It's like nobody worries about it. Nobody. And it's beautiful. So it's a gift. It's a real gift.
And where did you kind of said that the new members that were coming were hearing about this? Were they hearing about it just through other people, or how did the word get spread that what Peace was doing?
Yeah, pretty much word of mouth.
Okay.
It was neighbors talking to neighbors, and neighbors talking to a family member that came to visit, and so we're still largely a neighborhood church, and it just spreads that way. And sometimes people will come, like we had a City Pages article that was done a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
It was very sweet, and we had so many visitors showing up, thinking that we were the promised land or something. And then what they came to find out was here's this kid, running around, and here is, here's a choir that sometimes doesn't sing on key, and this person here keeps dropping their coffee cup, and it's okay. How can we help? And it's like, well, grab a cup of coffee and meet a few people and live your life. Helping will come. Don't worry about that part. But no, where do we sign up? And who organizes this? And it's like, well, if you want to come on Tuesday, I'm going to be working on someone's toilet. I work on Tuesday, So it becomes this, how can I plug into a regimented thing and give my gift at the prescribed time, and there's nothing wrong with that. I totally respect that. But the magic, that if there is any magic, it comes from people sharing their lives together. And so we had a number of people come through and then go back out. Because, it's better to be able to give than to just live your life with people. And but we've gotten a lot of support from the neighbors and from in the greater cities area and across the country, through that particular article. And so it's really been affirming. And it's been very, very wonderful. We had a member in the neighborhood that I almost gave the name, but it's an anonymous member that died, and they left $220,000 to this little church back in 2010. And I remember telling the Synod that we were going to tithe it, but we were going to find all these places that we're going to tithe to, and we were going to engage ourselves in how to spend that money for the good of the world. And we firmly believe in what the Synod's doing. I think it's an amazing Synod. And but our people never really understood about connecting money as a tool to what we do. So we were going to do that. I remember one of the bishop's assistants said, I heard about your gift. I'm so sorry to hear that. And I said, so sorry to hear that. He said, yeah, and I understand what he's saying here. He said, little churches like you guys, if you're given a big gift like that, usually that it ends up creating so many fights and animosity and disagreements about how to spend that money that it ends up tearing people apart. And we certainly could have gone that way, but we decided to, spread it out into 3 buckets, basically. Infrastructure of our building, would be X number of dollars. Give it to the neighborhood. Invest in the neighborhood somehow would be another third, and then another third would be programs and opportunities for people with education and whatnot, and helping. And so one of the things we did was, and the other thing is everything we do with that money, that gift will only give 50% of what's needed for that project. So the first thing people wanted to do is, let's get an elevator. because we couldn't afford an elevator 20 years prior. It was $200 and some $1,000. And so we ended up digging the elevator ourselves, got shovels. We dug the elevator out ourselves. We built it ourselves. We had a company come and put the guts in. And the whole project ended up being like $25,000 total for the whole thing, start to finish. And it took us about 1.5 years to do it together. And then we put solar panels on the roof, and all of our utilities are paid for now. And then we make $5,000-$6,000 a year off the solar panels, and that keeps being regenerated into the fund. So they even got creative with that money. How do we use this as a tool? How do we give it away? We bought a grand piano, not brand new, but enough so that the neighbors could come and use it for recitals and whatnot. And so resurrection happens in ways, but one of the things that I remember hearing from one of the committee members back when we got that money was they kept asking me, is there anything we could do with this money that would cause you to say, I'm done, I think I need to move on to another church? And I kept saying, as long as we all agree together in community what to do with this, and we all have a voice, it's a consensus, I can live with that. And they kept asking me. And then finally I said, if we use this money as a credit card, if we just take this money and use it to avoid needing our neighbors to help, then I think I'm done. If we use it as a credit card to pay a company to come and put an elevator in, and we can stand back and complain about how long they're taking or what the overages are in payments, we need to have some skin in the game, and we need to do this together. And there's nothing wrong with doing it, the way a good portion of society does, and just use the money. We didn't make the piano. We didn't come together and say, we'll put $10,000 for it and then we'll make the rest of the piano. There's some things we can't do, but there are some things we can. We can make the dolly for it. Mm-hmm. We've got a steel worker. You make the dolly for us. And by engaging people with the gifts they have, and one of the other things was, we're always on the ropes with money. We are this year too. We always said that you can only use up to 10% of that gift towards the operating budget. And it's been, how long has it been? 11 years since we got the gift. And we've never used a nickel of it for the operating budget, not one nickel. And, but we've used that money to do a lot of good stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's been and, we're totally, we create almost triple the energy of this building that we use. So we, in a sense, it's kind of strange. 1954 building, all concrete blocks with no insulation. And we would qualify as a LEED building.
Wow. That's amazing.
Because we're generating more energy than we're consuming. It's beautiful. And if we can do it, there's so many things that can be done. So
what would you say, because there are lots of congregations like Peace that are out there that are probably of that size. They, don't have a huge amount of money in the budget. What advice would you give them for where they are and what they can do? And I'm not saying necessarily to turn themselves around, but to basically to live, or to be to allow themselves to be resurrected. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Boy, I think I'd begin with just finding out where do they have joy? Where does their joy stem from? Quit focusing on the scene of the accident. Quit looking at the cars that they've driven. Quit looking at who they've been in the past. Stop all that and start asking serious questions about where do they find their joy? Where do they see resurrection happening already? And where are they curious? What's their curiosity? And I'm talking about just in their regular lives, not in their church life, but where do they find their passion, and go from there. Mm-hmm. Like the church I had in the Black Hills of South Dakota, I did a few things with people around working on homes for neighbors that were in need out there. It didn't really work. It didn't fit that place. But we helped a few people. They have a whole different ethos going on in the hills. Mm-hmm. And they did it in other ways, through the arts and, community garden. And, but they don't do it. Don't find something to do that can raise you money. Don't. It's like when we really look back on the ministry that we've done, we've gotten very little money from Christmas in August. It's cost us, but we've just come to enjoy it so much and to love our neighbors through it. And it's made a huge difference because it tapped into our passion. Mm-hmm. And we're always being scrappy about how can we make the budget. We're always doing that. Maybe we could write this grant or that grant, or maybe we could, put together, and every year is different. Like one year I had a number of elderly people that were getting dementia. Mm-hmm. And they were sitting home alone or with a partner that just never got a break. And I said to myself, maybe we should write a grant and create some kind of like a day program for some of our people, or maybe deliver them to the community center. And then somebody asked if we would be interested in putting an addition on their house as a kitchen right down the street. And next thing you know, I said, well, until I write that grant, maybe we'll do that with them. So we went down the street, and every day at lunch, the person that wanted this kitchen on their house was a volunteer of ours. She'd feed everybody that came. So she had people that, were forgetful and couldn't swing a hammer, so it was kind of like, I called it the Misfit Construction Company. And for over a year, everybody met there every day. And a lot of days I couldn't be there, but they'd still be there. They'd be sweeping up or sanding a little board that didn't need sanding or needed sanding. And then that family took care of all those people and got us through. So we were, given donations from that family for an addition. And that made our budget that year. It was amazing. But we created a day program for people in need by doing it. And it was creative. And it's like, is that sustaining? No, we're not doing that anymore. We don't have the ability to do it now, but who knows what's coming tomorrow, Yeah.
So how did the church fare during COVID? Since, a lot of people last year, most of the year, people weren't in churches and had to do things via YouTube or Facebook and all that. How did the church fare during that time period? We applied for the PPP loan, mm-hmm. And that really helped. We got about $20,000 through the government. That's like a fifth of our budget, and that really helped us. But we were also, that first year, the Synod, St. Paul area Synod, called and gave us $2,000 towards our bills and said, I think we're doing really well. We've got this PPP thing, give it to somebody that needs it. And they were very sweet. And I remember Patricia Lull said, no, we want you to have it.
It's from the ELCA, national, and for churches like yours, do something with it that'll help some people. Mm-hmm. So we ended up getting $100 gift cards to Aldi's to give out to people that needed it. And so we had 20 of them at first, $2,000 worth. And we gave them to our people and said, if you know somebody that's in need of groceries or help, give them this card. And the trick is this: give it to them and tell them that if they could use it, they should use it. If they can't use it, then give it to somebody that they think could use it. Pass it on. And then nobody felt like they were receiving something they shouldn't, or they weren't ashamed of it. They became a link in the chain for help down the line. And so it worked so well. And the thing was, people could come to the church and get 4 or 5 of these cards if they knew people. And so we were giving our own members these cards. And it was so amazing that people were able to come here and do that. And so we got another $2,000 of our money, and then another $2,000 of our money. So we've given $6,000 or $7,000 worth of those cards out since COVID began, on top of our pledging to the Synod and whatnot. And it's been beautiful because it's not a program we all vote on and then that's it. You just hear some kind of a report on where the money went. It's literally physical people handing help to somebody else and reaching out to neighbors. And it happened through all of our members. And so we've got about 4 of them left, but we're probably going to have to get more pretty soon. But that was wonderful. The other thing is we do share our sanctuary. We rent out the afternoon on Sundays to a Mennonite congregation called Emmanuel. And they have not met in the building since COVID started, but they still send us $1,300 a month. And we told them right away, and they're probably about the same size we are, but they've been committed. We said, stop paying rent until you come back. We know how hard it is. And they said, well, we know how hard it is to keep a building, and so they keep paying us every month, even though they're not in the building. And that's just been such a sweet relationship. And we look forward to them coming back. But our budget hurts more this year than it did last year. But we still meet on Zoom live. And we're doing a hybrid together, live and in person right now, like most people. But we stay masked, and people need each other. So we haven't. We've learned new things about ourselves and done some good things on Zoom that we wouldn't have done otherwise. So it's been good.
What are those things that you've learned on Zoom?
So
different.
Boy, I've really enjoyed it. And I've said this to, and our people would say the same thing. They've really enjoyed Zoom worship, trying to figure out what that is. And part of it is when you're in person, like we are now, we're half in person, half on Zoom, and we project it and people interact with each other. But when you're in person, there's all this body language going on. There's a breeze that comes in and makes everybody kind of, shudder a little bit. And then they look at each other in the eyes across the room. And for a moment, their concentration is gone. And they are wondering who opened the door. They're wondering, and then somebody drops something and then they look over and somebody's laughing. So there's all of this interaction that's going on that's unspoken in the room when it's live. And there's not a level of concentration. Like right now, I see you. Mm-hmm. We always joke about on Zoom, were they wearing pants or not? Who cares? It doesn't matter. But it's like you worry about all that stuff in person. But on Zoom, I'm looking at your bright smiling face and you got a painting on your wall, and that is it. So I'm interacting with you. And as a congregation of 50 people, everybody is muted except for a speaker. Everybody's focusing on that. They might drop their coffee cup, but nobody hears it. The dog might come in, nobody hears it. And if somebody wants to speak on Zoom worship, they have to physically unmute and people listen to them. And people that never spoke before speak on Zoom because they've got equal access, equal opportunity, and they know people will be listening. And so it's really been an equalizer that way for those that will do Zoom. But some people want nothing to do with it. And we don't have very many people like that. But we've tried to help them get computers if they need it. But it's, after church is done, people clear out and they're gone. And oftentimes Zoom breakout rooms will go for another hour, hour and a half. It's like because they have this undivided attention. And that's not something we have anymore in churches or otherwise. You don't have it. So.
Where do you see the future for the congregation?
I don't know. We have to catch up to it. I don't know. I've been here for 20 years now. Just about 20 years. It'll be 20 years, 18 years, 18 years. Feels like just started, but and it feels like 20 years, but it's changing all the time. And I was worried for a long time about because I believe this congregation is doing amazing things for this neighborhood. It's really a needed thing, sharing the body of Christ as the body of Christ in this place at this time is it's been so powerful. So I've started thinking about, wanting to be a good steward of this gift to the neighborhood. How can we set it up to be self-sustaining into the years to come, long after Dave Greenlund? And I've had plenty of people that have said, "Don't worry about that. Don't worry. Just keep trying to catch up to the future now. Forget about the safety of, guaranteeing this or that. It's kind of like, can we endow a position, And it's like, no, I think churches really need to be hungry. We need to be hungry and always alert about how to be bodies of Christ risen in this time and place. The future is somewhere on the road to Emmaus, it's up there somewhere. And right now, I know that we are doing our best to figure out how to keep this little girl safe from a virus, and how to continue to connect with people that are really scared and alone and restless. That's our future right now. And how do we remain hopeful in a world that just seems to be hell bent on self-sufficiency and doing their own safety measures of insurance, and how to save this democracy. It's not a bad thing to worry about, but it's not something that this church will survive and be the body of Christ, whether this democracy survives or not. And I have to keep telling myself that, because I worry about it all the time. How do we repair, the caste system we have in this country of racism? This church will continue to be the body of Christ, wherever we end up on that. And how do we present ourselves? Mm-hmm. There's a lot to be hopeless about, but there's so much that we need to die to in order to be the future. And part of some of the worrying is it needs to die. And I say that, I don't say that lightly, because I'm worried about a lot of things right now. And I just have to be reminded, is that little, demon angel goes running through the sanctuary, in my mind's eye, or I see her out on the street, down the street, running with her super boots, with her feet that don't work. And I remember, okay, we're the body of Christ, we're not this or that. So, the future, that ain't mine.
I think one thing that's been an interesting theme here is you talk a lot about kind of self-sufficiency. And it seems like one of the things that seems to have helped this congregation is to be vulnerable. Mm. Am I correct in that assessment, or it just seems like that's what I've been picking up?
Yeah, no, that's that's absolutely right. We can't do it alone, but that doesn't mean you don't start. You don't. When we started the elevator project, looking back on that, it's one of the craziest things I ever did. Crazy, because I told people to bring their shovels with them to church. We started digging a hole that was going to go 15 feet into the ground. I can't even remember how many tons of dirt that is, but you put your shovel in the ground and then you put the dirt where? It can't stay there because it's a big hole, and not thinking that through, and if you think through every problem that you're going to have, you'd never start. And we had bigger projects than that. You keep showing up, and not with all the materials you need, and just trusting that something will happen. But one example of that would be this. So we were going to put solar panels on the roof, and before we put solar panels on the roof, a hailstorm hit the roof, which was from God. The hailstorm from God hit the roof and gave us an insurance payout to put a new roof on this church, which we needed before we could put solar panels on. So they're putting the new roof on, and they realize they need insulation up there. And so they're putting insulation up there, and then they put the shingles on. And as a result, they've got insulation on the roof for the first time ever. And what happens is the roof is not going to melt the snow off anymore. So we created a problem. Now we've got this insulated roof that'll be more energy efficient, but now we're going to have this incredible load of weight on the roof that never was there. And the engineer for the solar panel said that the roof was going to collapse this winter in the first couple snows. And we said, that can't be true. This has been here for all these years. We got our own engineer who confirmed that and said, if you don't get the snow off that roof immediately when it comes down, the building's going to collapse. So we had people showing up every time it snowed more than an inch with roof rakes pulling the snow off. And then we had to come up with a plan to reinforce the roof with 12,000 pounds of steel and do it ourselves. Otherwise, it was going to cost $100,000. Mm-hmm. So we bought the steel, we had it delivered, we had to unload it, and then we had to figure out how to put 13,000 pounds of steel on the ceiling to keep the roof from collapsing. I don't know how to do that. And I still didn't know even after we put the stuff on the floor in the church. But people started coming up and showing up and saying, I think we could do it this way or that way. And I mean, it's just stupid, the things that we did, and very vulnerable. And, one thing we could have done is it wouldn't have been as vulnerable to just pick the right construction company and then just have cottage meetings to try to figure out how to raise $100,000 to save the roof. That's not vulnerable. That's not sure what it is, but it keeps us from being vulnerable. And we've gotten far from that. So yeah, that's a great point. It's about vulnerability. and not worrying about looking like a fool. We look really foolish here. We really do.
Well, but I think that also goes back to Christ as well. I mean, that there is a talk about kind of Christ being foolish, and Paul talks about that. So it's pretty biblical to act foolish.
Yeah, we in some ways, it's kind of like where we started this conversation. It's kind of like we didn't have any kids that would show us that we had life, but we all have an inner kid. And to see a 97-year-old lady with arthritic knees on the floor, giggling in a sanctuary as she painted with house paint is priceless. And it's so childlike and childish and full of life. Her giggles are full of life. And we don't have enough of that, but it comes out of a vulnerability. Yeah, you're right.
Well, thank you for this interview. This was, I think, a very helpful, engaging, and to tell the story of one church. I'm hoping that it can make a difference to other people who are listening. It's not necessarily you do this and this will happen, but I think it's helpful to hear those stories, to give communities of faith to think about that.
Yeah, I pray that people that hear this will just start learning how to continue opening their eyes the way they have been, but open your eyes and just keep looking and keep watching and listening and being foolish and, follow the laughter, follow the smiles, and then follow the food. Follow the food together and laugh. It'll happen. Yeah. And that food might be a potluck saying goodbye to a ministry. That's okay too. There might be something else coming.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for the great questions. And I'm glad that there are people out there that are doing the same things in different ways. And it feels good to not be alone.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
All right.
You be well.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care.
All right.
All right. Thankful that I got the time to talk to Dave. I'm thankful that he was able to take some time to do that. And I want to thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And please take some time to leave a rating or review, especially if you listen on Apple Podcasts. Leaving a review makes it a lot easier for people to find the podcast. And I like to think that this is a podcast that others need to hear, and I hope that you think that too. There is a link in the show notes that makes leaving a review rather easy. And also, just to add this, by the way, if you don't know, En route also has a YouTube channel. I do try to put some of the episodes on YouTube. They are usually closed captioned, so that to help for those who are hearing impaired. So check that out check the link in our show notes, and then subscribe. And also consider visiting our website at enroutepodcast.org. One quick note is to know that there are going to be some changes happening within the next month. I can't go into much more than that right now, but just to let you know, podcast is not ending. No major big changes. We're still going to be a podcast focused on religion, but just some changes that are happening. So hopefully we will have some more episodes coming down the pike. I am working on those things, so just stay tuned. And that's it for this episode of En route. Notes on Religion, Politics, and Culture. I'm Dennis Sanders, the host. Take care and Godspeed.